So Joe, thank you very much for volunteering to speak to me today on behalf of the Barry War Museum and Heritage Centre. I know you've got some stories to tell us from from the Second World War. First of all, how old were you during World War II?
I was 11 years old when the war was declared.
Okay.
17 when it finished.
Long time. Yes. And what are some of your memories from those years?
Sharing a shelter in somebody's garden 2 doors down from us. We couldn't have one, I don't know why. We had an indoor shelter. I used to get in there with the feet first instead of head first because it was claustrophobic. But anyway, we survived. I could tell more stories about my sister because she was 6 years older than me, so she was 17 when the war broke out. And she wasn't called up when she was 18, which would have been the same year that her birthday. She wasn't called up then because she was the only one in the office, but she was called up a couple of years later, and she worked for Currans, which was the armaments factory down at Cardiff Bay, but she wasn't in the factory, she was in the offices at Grangetown, and she typed a lot about Pluto. Now it was years later that we discovered, or she discovered, that typing about Pluto was the pipeline under the ocean. She was sworn to secrecy. She was under secret. Anyway, that was one little story. She came rushing in one evening to the house in Massacombe Street. Come on, come quick. And so all of my brother was there and my mother and father. So we went with her. She took us out from the house up to Gladstone Road, and we stood on the corner there, and it was tanks, lorries, guns, all coming along the road. You couldn't have crossed the road because there was so much traffic. They went up Tillyworth Hill and along Barry Road to get down to the docks. And when you turned round and looked out at the sea, it was full of ships. And that must have been just a couple of days, or might have been the second, couple of days before the invasion. But other than that, we didn't know that the invasion was taking place. What else? Well, we spent a lot of time in air raid shelters. I worked in Cardiff, and I spent quite a lot of time there, rushed into shelters because they were heading for the docks in Cardiff. Other than that.
And what about rationing? What can you recall
Sorry?
about rationing?
Rationing?
Yes.
My mother used to go out shopping early in the morning. Other than that, because she wouldn't get a loaf of bread, and she used to have to queue for it anyway.
Because rationing went on for many years.
We used to have our own dishes without butter in because it was only a small amount. And my mother used to sometimes mix it with margarine, but we complained about that, so we had to have our butter separate.
And could you make it last a week?
No. Actually, when I was in school, which would have been the beginning part of the war, she did have help because I was going to cookery lessons, and they used to supply us with so much margarine and sugar, whatever we were cooking. So she used to find that a great help. But she was a good cook anyway. I don't remember much about food. It was all pretty basic.
And I understand that you met somebody who, took part in the raid of Dieppe.
Oh, that was, he was talking about my cousin Francis. Yes, they went over to France this year. Yeah. Francis was killed, he was only 19. Yes, he lived in Castellan Street. Yeah, a nice lad. He was my brother's best friend because they were both about the same age. And he used to call to the house very often to go out with my brother Des. I've got an uncle, one of my father's brothers, who has got the BMOB some award for helping to rescue the Greek royal family during the war. He was, I didn't know he was in the intelligence. He lived in Greece for years. His name was Roland Gale, and somebody asked me to look it up, but I'm too old to bother.